It is my great honor and pleasure to announce a product that we'll be releasing next year called Signal Synergy. I am playing the role of Heather Hayes. Heather is the product owner who is driving all this and doing a truly superb job. So if you have questions, there's a chance that I can't answer them, and then I'll connect you to Heather. And if this is of interest to you, Heather is doing an excellent job of engaging with the market, gathering feedback so that we can get the first version of this as close to the ideal solution as possible. And I do realize that I'm standing between you and the end of a wonderful two-day conference, so I will attempt to be as engaging and quick as possible. So what prompted this were interactions with customers like Jürgen, the presentation you just saw. It is a recurring need between sponsors and CROs to be able to engage, collaborate, share information, share work assignments, track that work. And there haven't really been great tools out there to do it. There have been a lot of ad hoc solutions that have been put together, but it's still a huge pain point between sponsors of all sizes, large and small, and CROs of all sizes, large and small. And the kind of feedback that we received, the kind of quotes that we received as we were planning this as a strategic product initiative, were things like, we get slightly different Excel reports from multiple CROs, and we spend a lot of time having to parse and arrange and correct those Excel reports into a common format. Or we have so much turnover of personnel at CROs that it's hard to keep it all up to date. Or, the most damning of which is this last quote. About 25% of the data we get from CROs doesn't pass our review, and we have to send it back to them to get corrections. So it's a huge problem where you have this segregated interface between sponsors and CROs that clearly needed something to improve upon it. So we got funding for and began developing this product, Signal Synergy. And it really comes down to 5 pillars. The first is administration, standing up a CRO, onboarding a CRO, initiating a collaboration project, sharing that project with the CRO, having the CRO manage their own personnel, and then begin distributing work in a secure environment. Drug design. So a lot of this and some the initial parts are really focused around drug or really product design, the ideation part, because realistically, you have to complete the cycle here. And so this becomes the place where you can go from designs, from hypotheses to ideas to designs to distributed work. A key piece is also IP protection. So one of the key challenges is you have to be able to share just the correct amount of data with the CRO for them to be able to do the work. Not too much and not too little. And there's certain key aspects of your intellectual property that you want to make certain are firewalled, are only staying within your environment. So how do you manage that while still being able to manage the CRO and their efforts? Once you have the work assigned, how do you manage the project? What tasks are proceeding well? Which ones are delayed? What's the new prioritization? And finally, once you have completed the work, how do you efficiently incorporate and synchronize the data from the unstructured CRO reports, or ERO reports, I like that actually better, into your internal repository in a way that doesn't require a lot of copy-paste or a lot of manual manipulations. We have aspects within Signal Synergy that address all 5 of these, and I'm going to go through them in sequence. But this is what the world looks like today, and there are parts of this that I think will look quite familiar. You as a sponsor are going to initiate the work typically by doing some ideation outside, maybe bring in your IT group to start the project, building out some nice Excel spreadsheets, and then emailing those spreadsheets with the work assignment to the CRO, maybe with some PDFs and some other things, and it all gets shared in an ad hoc fashion. And the CRO, when they do their work, they're going to be sending emails back and forth. They might be copy-pasting some of the experimental details either into an environment or a template you prescribe that they use. And of course, because a lot of this is happening outside of any system, there can be errors in transcription. But eventually, you'll receive the report back. You'll do some data wrangling. I've seen several versions of nearly identical parsing code to try to parse these Excel reports into a common format. What we want, of course, is to create something that looks much more like this, where you as a sponsor have an idea, you onboard a CRO, you start the collaboration with them, distribute the work. They do their work inside of a proper environment, a signals environment, capturing all the experimental details, very much like you saw in the prior talk. Then when you receive the information back, it flows as automatically as possible back into your systems. This is the dream. And this is what we are delivering as part of the product next year. So it begins with the simplified administration of the CROs. And it comes down to kind of a simple idea that you have a sponsor admin who is going to set up and enable a CRO admin, and they're responsible for their personnel. They know the departments they're in, they know who is working on which areas, they know who is working on which projects, and as those people move around, it's their responsibility to maintain it. And so here is an example of what the screen looks like, where you initiate a contract research organization, you name them, they add their members, they add their departments, and so forth. So the simplest solution to that resource management problem is to put it where the resources are being managed, namely by the CRO. And then we, in Signal Synergy, control all the security and permissions to make sure that everything's firewalled without having to manually configure those access groups. It's taken care of by the administration, by the software, I mean. So, of course, the goal here is that, for the sponsor, with all the personnel turnover, Synergy makes it as easy as possible to initiate new collaborations, and the CRO admin then has all the responsibility for doing all of the management of the people that are going to be part of that project for that CRO. Once you have a CRO onboarded, the next step is to initiate a collaboration. That's the term of art we're using. We settle on collaboration after having gone round and about a variety of different names. So a collaboration is a project. It's a place where the internal and external groups are working together. But the key within this is that as the sponsor admin, as I'm setting up this collaboration, I can ascribe and designate certain fields as being internal fields. The information in those internal fields cannot be shared externally except for by someone with the appropriate permissions, meaning typically an admin. So here's an example where you would have the materials library, which would be hidden from the CRO, maybe the project, an internal name, an internal description, what the actual target is. So obviously this is all information that's really important for tracking the progression of the results. But you may not want the CRO to know what the target is. If they are developing molecules, you're just telling them what to develop, but they should not know what the target, they're being developed to target. This concept of the IP protection is baked in throughout the product, and is, we think, one of the really key features of what we can provide as a productized solution to this space is really managing very carefully the provenance of the IP. Oops. There we go. So again, with Synergy, the goal here is to make it as easy as possible to analyze, to maintain that metadata, but have it be available such that only the internal users can see the things that are meant to be kept secret. So the stuff that's external can be shared by both, but the stuff that should only be kept internal is only visible to those internally with the right permissions. The next step of this is design. And this the ideation step that goes into the triage or the prioritization of the work for ascribing which work will be progressed in which order. So here's what the design table looks like. So there's a hypothesis, and then within the hypothesis there will be a series of designs, and there are also callouts here. So this is where some of your predictive analytics can come in. Based upon the designs, you can do callouts from here to, or the plan is for callouts to different kinds of analytic capabilities. Maybe you're going to do a docking or some kind of an energetic calculation or just a C log P. And that information can be brought in at this stage as part of the work to do the prioritization of the triage. So the other piece is this is actually a manageable table. So here I can move things up and down. So imagine yourself at that project team meeting where you're looking at the designs, you're looking at the most recent results, and being able to just slide things around so that you have organized the things to the top of the list that you might want to advance to the next stage. That's also a pretty novel feature for those of you who have used Signals. That ability to drag and drop things around is something that we're adding in to fulfill this kind of a requirement in the platform. So we have all these very excited scientists that we have gotten hypothetical quotes from. That synergy makes it easy to do that design, make test design process, and have it all be tracked and managed all inside of the Signal suite. So you have a central location where you can connect that entire cycle. Once you've made a set of designs, the next step is to submit them for work. So here in this next step, conceptually the user has selected the top 3 designs, and they're going to assign a work order for all 3 of those designs to the CRO. So those 3 designs get amalgamated together into a work order. Of course, you can do them one at a time, but we've thought through and handled the case where you might have one-to-one, you might have multiple-to-one, so we handle all of those cases. And the work order is the place where there's this secure passage of information kind of gets codified. So you have all the details about the work order, like its status, its priority, which department's going to. Very importantly, you have also the experiment template. So the Synergy template now is an experiment template that gets associated with this work order, because you, as the sponsor, should have the right to tell your CRO, here's the way we want you to execute this work. The way we make that as easy as possible is at the time the work order assignment is being created, that experiment template is associated with that work order. So when the CRO picks us up and they basically get a go button, they will create the experiment for them with the template and the configuration you want. Also within this sharing of the work order assignment will be a copy of, or a subset of the information that was in the design table will be brought over as what we call a reference table. So the design table is fully internal. That's what your internal group is going to be looking at, and may contain some IP. The reference table is the table that has the subset of information that you have designated is correct and appropriate to share with the CRO doing the work. And that reference table brings over whatever subset of information that was part of your ideation process to help guide the work at the CRO. And again, I've iterated this a couple times, it is completely expected that you might have a mixture of information that would be annotated for this kind of material. And some of it, for example, the compound structure, the compound name, the molecular formula, could be designated as IP. So you would have a control over whether or not that's shared, and that would be part of the configuration of Signal Synergy. So in these next steps, we're going to be going back and forth between the sponsor user and the CRO user and a number of things, a number of screens. So you always keep an eye on the bottom here. You'll see at the bottom it's a bright blue bar if it's a sponsor user, and it will be a black bar if it's a CRO user, just to help emphasize what some of the differences might look like. So the sponsor user here can see both the material ID. So material ID is this shown here, as well as the external ID. That is the reference, that is essentially the temporary ID that's used for managing the work. Because you have to have some language that can be used by the inside and outside to be able to talk about, for example, the molecules. The CRO user only sees the external ID, unless you choose to share the internal ID. So the work order is really this place where the sponsor project manager can easily organize the work. They can protect their internal IP. They can be certain that only the information that the CRO should see has been shared. They have to do nothing manually to configure the security. It's taken care of by the product. And for the CRO scientists, the benefit is they have a work queue. And it's very clear and unambiguous what the prioritization is, what the information that's necessary, and they have this centralized space where all the notes and conversations can be recorded. Once the work has been assembled, we have a nice Kanban board that allows the work to be tracked. In this configuration of the board, the tasks are being grouped by status. And so your vertical swim lanes here are your status swim lanes, so you can see as the work is progressing along. The color coding has to do with the work type. And this screen, it may look a little bit more colorful than would be in practice for any particular project team. But this is to highlight the concept that this is intended to go beyond just like molecule synthesis. This is how you would queue up assay results, queue up in vivo studies, queue up formulations work, and so forth. And each of those would be a different work type that could then be easily tracked. You can change this, of course, from grouping by status to grouping by due date, because this is all just Kanban board visualizations of the annotations on the work orders. And the CRO manager, excuse me, the sponsor manager has oversight over everything. They might have a project team that has oversight over their project, but the CRO can only see what's been assigned to them. So now this black bar at the bottom shows that I'm the CRO user, and as the CRO user, I can only see the work that's been assigned to me. So here is just a quick example of what this Kanban board looks like. So you go in, you select a particular work order, and you can see that these were the designs that were part of that. This has now been clicked to go to the experiment. So this is the CRO user who knows the work order. They're drilling through into the experiment. And this should look very familiar by now. This is a Signals Notebook page. It's a template that was defined and associated with that work order. When they have created the synthesized result in this example, it knows the designs that it came from. And so in this point and click operation, the CRO user can associate their work product with the designs that were requested. The sponsor user can then go in and basically do their review, where they can see the external ID, the sample ID, the designs, and confirm this is the right material for the design that was requested. And the sponsor user is the one then that goes and does the final material registration. So the CRO user never actually gets the final internal material ID. That stays internal because that's part of your IP. And you see at this point now you have that connection of the material ID, the original reference ID, as well as the external ID. It would be another column. Yeah, it shows up there. And if you go back to being the CRO user, you'll shown here, the only thing that shows up as the material ID is that external ID. They never get to see it. And but you still have this external ID that's used for talking back and forth. So the final step of this is having created molecules. The next thing you're going to do is test them. And a lot of those assays will be run externally as well these days. And very typically, you'll get back some lovely report from the CRO in Excel that may look like that, where you have tables within a given sheet, or maybe the materials and method. Maybe you have something like this where it's kind of a pseudoplate map where there are a bunch of merged cells and merged rows, merged columns and merged rows that need to be parsed out. Or maybe you're getting back the raw data, which is the plate-based data. So particularly if you go back to these kinds of reports, sometimes, particularly for some of the in vivo studies, these will be multiple pages with data arranged for a human to read, but not really arranged for a computer to interpret. So one of the things that has been built into Synergy is this data transformation engine that's designed to take reports from a variety of formats, parse and ingest them, and return back the table or tables that have been properly structured for data load automatically. So here is an example of that same an assay experiment where this is the data exchange that's associated with it. So here the CRO scientist is able to go in and look at a blank version of the template that they are to fill out. So this is just a pretty typical looking template of one of the ones that we've seen, in this case for a IC50 assay. So the CRO is able to review that. They're also able to review an example, but now they can take their report, their final report, that might have been produced internally, drag and drop it in, and now Synergy will parse and process that Excel CRO report into a final valid status in this example. And now I'm going to shift from the CRO over to the sponsor user. You see the blue bar at the bottom. And the sponsor user can see and review the final load sheet, as we call them. This is the final parsed interpreted. So this is automatically generated. And if it's configured that way, it would be automatically loaded into Signals Inventa. They can also then view the original Excel report from the CRO in all its glory, confirm that that matches what the parse was, and then they could load in Inventa. They could download this to load into some other external system. You could use an external action to send this to some external system and so forth. The key piece here is to make it as easily as possible to get from whatever format the data has been delivered in. And I would submit that you ideally want your CROs generating that report in whatever is their normal way. Because if you are forcing them to change their normal practice to conform to your practice or your templates, what that probably means they're doing is copy pasting it. So if they have an internal system, maybe an internal ELN they're using to generate those results, we have set it up such that you can consume those and have it converted automatically into a format that you can load into your internal systems. So here is an example where there are two tables, the raw data table and the measurement table. They can go through a publication into the data layer underlying Signals in Vita, and then visualize those results together with other internal results in Signals in Vita. The other concept here is that we have baked in to the signal synergy this concept of segregation of the CRO data. You heard that in the prior talk, just how important it is to have essentially these CRO visible slices that are kept entirely separate from each other, entirely sacrosanct. And that's just baked in for you as part of what the setup of the CRO and collaboration is taken care of by the product here. And that is what we're bringing to market next year. So less oversight, more insight. That's the goal for Signal Synergy. The target for this is, I won't be more specific than to say Q2 of next year, but the project's going really well, and Heather, like I said before, is doing a great job. So with that, I will be very happy to answer any questions, and thank you for staying with me.